Hello and welcome to the Beat Cancer Answer, brought to you by BeatCancer.Org, the Center for Advancement in Cancer Education. We believe that 90% of all cancers could be eliminated through environmental and lifestyle choices alone, and science agrees. Unfortunately, most people don't know it, so we provide the education that can help you prevent, cope with, and beat cancer through diet, lifestyle, and other immune-boosting approaches. On every podcast, we will feature an expert who can teach us how to become part of that 90% who could prevent getting diagnosed with cancer. If you already have cancer, we have empowering information for you too. Over the past 35 years, we have helped thousands of cancer patients get back into the driver's seat when it comes to their personal journey of healing cancer and preventing future reoccurrence. Dr. Christine Horner is a nationally known surgeon, author, and professional speaker. She holds board certifications from the National Board of Surgery and the National Board of Plastic Surgery. In this podcast, Dr. Horner talks about the proven science behind protective strategies for breast cancer. She covers topics including natural ways to cut your breast cancer risk in half, do mammograms really save lives, and much, much more.
I can do anything. I am strong.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Survive and Live Well, tips to treat and beat cancer. As always, my goal is to empower you with information to help you regain control of your health. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Christine Horner, a board-certified surgeon and renowned preventive health expert, and author best known for her national crusade to pass laws requiring insurance companies to pay for breast reconstruction following mastectomy. Her BRA project, or Breast Reconstruction Advocacy Project, was signed into law as a federal bill called the Women's Health and Cancer Rights Act of 1998 by President Bill Clinton, after Dr. Horner met with him and First Lady Hillary Clinton. Dr. Horner is the award-winning author of Waking the Warrior Goddess, Dr. Christine Horner's program to protect against and fight breast cancer, and is one of the country's leading authorities on breast cancer prevention. So exciting to have you here, Dr. Horner. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Well, we're looking forward to a lot of wonderful conversation. So,
Great.
Dr. Horner, what is your take on the recent round of bad news when it comes to mammograms for screening breast cancer? Do mammograms really save lives, or is it simply that we may live longer with a diagnosis?
Well, that's a great question, and I don't think it's necessarily bad news. I think it's good news because we need to change technologies. So, what we're finding out is that mammograms aren't all cracked up to what we thought they were supposed to be, and as doctors in Western trained medicine, and we're taught kind of like that's our only tool really as a screening tool to do mammograms. And yes, we have ultrasounds and MRI scans that we can use too, but those are always used if, they're trying to look at something further on a mammogram. So many different problems they found with mammograms is one, and the worst one for me, is that it uses radiation. And radiation, we absolutely know, is a risk factor for breast cancer. And it's not a small one, radiation is actually something that's accumulative. So if you were to get your mammograms every single year starting at, whatever age, as you start to get up there, it really does have potentially significant contributions to actually causing breast cancer. I'm like, well, why would you do a test that uses radiation or something that's known to cause the disease you're looking for? I mean, to me, that I'm just scratching my head going, that just makes no sense.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. You're right. So, but, then in addition to that, some of the statistics that you find with it are fairly alarming, and a lot of people don't really know about them. And that is that, mammograms aren't very specific. So that means that when they find something that's wrong, they say, so this is suspicious and needs to have a breast biopsy done, they're wrong 80% of the time.
Huge.
So, if you think about it, it's like the added medical costs, but of course the extreme emotional costs are enormous with that. So you're wrong 80% of the time. So, there's 1 million breast biopsies that are done in the United States every year, and 800,000 of them are unnecessary. So there was a study that was done that looked at the psychological impact of these women who got the false, we'll call them false positives.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was they looked at psychological disturbances, emotional disturbances about 6 months after they'd had that false positive, and they compared it to women who were actually diagnosed with breast cancer, and they found that there was no difference. They were just as, psychologically disturbed and stressed out from having had that false positive. So it's not a benign thing. Oh, well, everything's fine. Don't worry about it.
Right.
The next thing that a lot of people don't know either is that mammograms will only pick up breast cancers that produce calcium. And about 80% of the tumors will do that. So it misses 20 to 30% of breast cancers. And I've had patients where their entire breast was replaced with cancer and it didn't show up on a mammogram. So it can lead to the false reassurance that everything's okay when it's not, and to delayed diagnosis. When you have a test that is that bad, you really can't have it as a standalone test. And that's how we've been using it, as a standalone test, and it shouldn't be used that way. And again, the problem that I have with it is the radiation. And then the next, major issue is that it's over-diagnosing. So this is something that's really very well recognized, which is that it's picking up cancers that really aren't cancers, and they won't grow into anything. And so we call them ductal carcinoma in situ, or lobular carcinoma in situ. And what it means is that you've got some changes that are inside the duct there with the ductal carcinomas that haven't invaded yet. So they're technically not cancers. They're considered a tumor marker. And what we know with them is that about 20% of women who have that will go on to develop invasive breast cancer in 5 years. 80% won't. Now, we don't know what to do with it, right? So what Western medicine does is it treats it just like it was breast cancer. So all of these women are getting, cancer treatments from surgery, radiation, all this kind of stuff to treat ductal carcinoma in situ, when in fact they wouldn't have developed into anything. So what the research is showing us is that the people who, there was actually a huge study that just came out a couple of months ago that followed 90,000 women over 25 years. I mean, that's huge. And what they found was that the number of, quote, lives that were saved, from it equal the number of lives that were overdiagnosed. So basically they were saying, mammograms aren't, really saving any lives. Their harms are being underestimated. The good is being overestimated. And when you figure out all the statistics on it, it turns out that, it doesn't really do, it doesn't really save lives or help much in any way, and can be, harmful. So actually Switzerland just came out with a proclamation about a month or so ago. And they said that based on all the studies that have been done, not just that one, but many of them, that they have decided to phase out mammography in Switzerland. They're not starting any new programs, and the ones that they have, they're going to phase out. So when you look into the research on the alternatives, which we have alternatives and very good ones, they find that if you do a combination of 3 different tests, because again, no test is perfect and none of them are meant to be standalone. So it shows that if you do 3 tests, that's when you get the very best information as far as the specificity, meaning if you find something wrong, it actually is wrong, and sensitivity, meaning that if there is something wrong, you're actually picking it up. And so they find that using various different kinds of ultrasounds, there's more sophisticated ultrasounds out there that give us some better information, along with physical examination, or, things that kind of work like that can augment physical examination, because most breast cancers are found by the patients or their significant others. And then thermography. And thermography is an infrared picture of the breast. It's completely harmless, just a picture. It uses infrared technology, which picks up heat. And the first thing that happens before a breast cancer forms is that new blood vessels start to grow into the area, but the blood vessels are not normal. They're abnormal. They grow in abnormal patterns. They produce an abnormal amount of heat, and that's what thermography sees. So it's kind of like your breast running a fever is what we see. And the really cool thing about thermography is that it's not limited by anything, by age, breast implants, reconstruction, or anything. It can be used for anybody, completely harmless. And it's the only test that we have that's truly preventative. So it's seeing, these physiological, it's not anatomical. That's what ultrasounds and MRI scans are and mammography. But it's a physiological exam that we can pick up changes before someone actually has a tumor. And when you make some healthy diet and lifestyle changes that we're going to be talking about, we can get complete reversals of some of these early warning signs within 8 to 12 weeks.
Which is a huge point because mammograms are not prevention, but thermography is. Exactly right. And if you think about it, the stats out there are not insignificant. And I know everyone gets, feels it. Well, if mine had been caught on a mammogram, everyone says some people are in that camp where theirs was caught on a mammogram. But as you say, for everyone that was, think of all those that went through unnecessary treatment. And you think of, like in the case you made about the DCIS, so now there's a woman getting a lumpectomy and endless radiation for something that may never have come to fruition.
Right. Yeah, and radiation has horrible side effects too, So,
right, encouraging more cancer, and that she didn't have a problem before, but by golly, she's going to have a problem now because they just did all this radiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, fantastic. So one question that came in is there was a little question about the calcium. So you say you need the calcium to see it on the cancer on the mammogram.
Yeah.
Can you explain that? And is that related to calcifications?
So there's all sorts of different kinds of calcium, in our body. They're completely different. But in the breast, what we'll see is that there's calcium that will be deposited sometimes. And sometimes we get bigger deposits, and those are usually associated with benign disease. And at this point, we're not really sure why people develop that. The microcalcifications, so teeny tiny calcifications, those are things that, we'll see associated with breast cancers. And usually as far as the radiological examination, they look at clusters of like 6 or more microcalcifications are more specific. But for whatever reason, it's certain breast cancers will deposit some of that calcium in them as they grow.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so in your first edition of Waking the Warrior Goddess, it was fantastic. And actually, it was the first book I read after my diagnosis, and it really set me on my course to understand that there was more to the story than I was being told. Even though I had a fantastic team, they really weren't educated on what else can I do. And they actually encouraged me to go find out what else I could do. And so when I read your book,
that's unusual.
It was fantastic. They said, we have not been trained in that, but we have. We could say with all certainty that is a very good idea. Mm-hmm. Beyond the fact that they would tell me to exercise and things, they really encouraged me to do what I was telling them I wanted to do. Find more things. So it was good. But now in your new edition, you reveal some new findings on breast cancer prevention. And I'd love to talk about a few of those, such as what is panchakarma and how does it get rid of toxins?
Sure. I'm going to just do kind of a backtrack just a little bit and just mention, just historically, like what led me to this. So, I worked as a plastic surgeon and I did a lot of breast reconstructive surgery because I had a special interest in it because my mom was a breast cancer patient and she ultimately ended up getting metastatic breast cancer and dying from it. And she had stage 1 disease with no lymph node metastasis and all of her tumor markers were favorable. So that really rocked my world. And then in my practice, I was noticing that my patients were getting younger and younger. And finally, I was doing women in their 20s. And that's when I thought, oh my God, something is seriously wrong. So I started going through the medical research just to see if there's anything in there that I could find that, research showed that women could do to help lower the risk. And it made sense to me that, there had to be something that we could do. And I found thousands of studies that show exactly why we have a breast cancer epidemic and prostate cancer and colon cancer and ill health in general and all the things that we're doing to contribute to it and the things that we traditionally don't do in this culture that are highly protective. And they were all natural. So food, supplements, herbs, lifestyle. These are all the things I was taught in my medical training didn't make a difference. And I was like, okay, I think they were wrong on that one. So this is the first time I'd really, gone through that, and I hadn't seen any other book that really was comprehensive and going through all the things that the medical research showed that you could do that either you need to avoid or the things that you need to favor, to help to lower your risk. And there's dozens and dozens and dozens of things. And the cool thing is that if you do one thing, and I found this invariably, you cut your risk in half. If you do more than one thing, those things will multiply up together. They don't add up together. So it becomes incredibly simple to dramatically lower your risk. And I usually have people start with the simplest things for them, so it's not painful. I'll end up doing it, but invariably everything that I found, will cut your risk in half. So the idea with my book was to really give people a comprehensive, place to go where they could read about everything that I could find in the medical research, natural approaches, so these are non-pharmaceutical, non-surgical, but they're all, the natural approaches that can lower your risk. And also I noticed with my patients too that the number one thing that just drove them nuts, my breast cancer patients, is that as soon as they got diagnosed, everybody was coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh, you should do this," or "I heard you should do that."
Of course.
So nobody, and then it's like, what, should I do this? I don't know. So it was really about trying to, write something in an extremely readable fashion where it can cut through all the, different controversies and myths and really show the facts, based on what the research, shows. And, all the time I'll hear people, asking me questions about, things that are kind of out in left field. And, really the thing to do is to concentrate on the items that have the most research on them. And, that way you're going to have the, best impact. So that being said, you asked me about
but before we do actually move on to the spa treatments, we'll just clarify one thing. This is what I always tell people. This is when math is not math. 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, and 1 + 1 does not equal 2, as you mentioned. So, for example, maybe talk about this like green tea plus curcumin. When you add the two of them together, right? The synergy creates.
Turmeric, the Indian spice that has that bright yellow-orange color in curries, is one of the most well-researched plants ever in all time. I mean, there's like over 6,500 studies in the medical research now, and MD Anderson is doing a lot of the research too, here in the United States. So, it will inhibit 17 different kinds of cancers, but it has 150 different ways that they've found, that it works. Now, green tea is also a kind of a superstar as far as an anti-cancer substance, and they found about 11 different cancers that it will inhibit. And then whenever you combine two healthy foods or supplements or whatever, invariably we find that there are synergistic effects, meaning each one makes the other one more effective. And so when you combine green tea and turmeric, for instance, there was a study that showed that green tea enhances the anti-cancer effects of turmeric by 3 times, and turmeric enhances the anti-cancer effects of green tea by 8 times. So this is why it becomes so incredibly easy to dramatically lower your risk, because again, with each one of them, you can see almost a 50% reduction. And it's like, boy, when you start combining and you get these multiplications, and like I said, there's simple things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay, so now let's head to the spa.
Sure. So, one thing that we've recognized is that toxins, particularly that we have in our environment right now, that many of them are what we call xenoestrogens, meaning that they mimic the estrogen molecule, and then they also are classified as endocrine disruptors. But basically, they're messing with our hormones in a bad way and contributing to breast cancer. And there's a number of different chemicals that we found that range from herbicides and pesticides to plastics to heavy metals. Plastics you're not supposed to microwave because of the bisphenol A and the phthalates that we know are contributors, cosmetics, petroleum products. I mean, they're everywhere. And so now more than ever, it's really important for us to do detoxification. So one of the phenomenons that are noted in the human body is that when we get toxins in our body, for the most part, they're called lipid-soluble, meaning that they dissolve in fat and they will store in our fat cells. In fact, what they do is concentrate and store in our fat cells. So there was a study that was done on DDT, the pesticide that we don't use anymore, but we, very nicely make it and send it to other countries where they spray it on their fruits and vegetables and they send it back to us. They're so nice, called the circle of poison. So DDT definitely has an association with increasing the risk of breast cancer, and there was a study looking at the blood levels versus the fat levels of it, and they found that it was 700 times more concentrated in the fat than in the blood. And naturally breaking down, we'll see that some of these chemicals will not do that, or they'll stay in our bodies for 20 years or so, so we really want to get rid of them. Now, 5,000 years ago, the system of medicine called Ayurveda, so Ayur means life and Veda means knowledge, literally means the knowledge of life, and it was practiced in the area of India. Deepak Chopra talks about it, so most people, if you haven't heard of it, you really have, because that's what yoga, meditation, and herbs, all those things originated from Ayurveda. So Ayurveda is all about balancing the body, teaching different things that you can do to help balance the body, which enhances our body's inner healing intelligence, and that's what keeps us well. And all the different techniques are fundamentally based on that. Now, they recognized 5,000 years ago that people need to do regular detoxification, because if you're emotionally upset, those molecules of emotion, those get stuck in your fat cells too. And they cause, toxic buildup if you don't digest your foods, very well, which can come from, again, stress, emotions, or maybe eating at the wrong times or eating too much or whatever, that the undigested portions of our food will clog our system and cause toxins, and then that clogging is something that really blocks our inner healing intelligence and prevents it from keeping us well. So the idea is that what you're doing is helping to lift out these lipid-soluble toxins and eliminate them from the body. So it can sound like it might be something painful or awful, but it's not. In fact, it's completely luxurious, and what they do is they do it in a spa setting. There is lots of heat treatments. They use oil massages, and they're, it's actually just, sometimes I'm moaning when they're working on me. It feels so good. But it is the most effective treatments that they found to help get these toxins out. So the NIH actually gave millions of dollars to help research this, because they found that it helped with the VA vets. It helps with people that have heavy metal toxicities, like they've treated people that firefighters. They've treated people that work at stained glass factories, with the lead poisoning and so forth. But they pull these toxins out, and they actually have done studies where they took biopsies of fat cells. They tested for the toxins, and they found that a 5-day treatment, just one 5-day treatment, cuts the toxin load in half. Wow. So it's really extraordinary. And then in addition to that, what it does is it profoundly balances your body. And when you finish, I just actually did Panchakarma a few weeks ago, and I arrived at my location and had a girlfriend there. And I've been traveling nonstop and was just exhausted. And at the end of the 5-day treatment, she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God," she goes, "you're glowing. You look 100% better than you did when you first got here." So it gives you just, this profound state of balance, and, really helps to correct any kind of chronic diseases you have, working on you, as well as getting the toxins out. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So sign me up. So where do we go for these therapies? Where do we find them?
Well, the great thing is that they're popping up more and more, around the United States. So kind of the cream of the cream is I was trained under what's called Maharshi Ayurveda, and so there's a place called the Raj in Fairfield, Iowa. It's RAJ, and that one is kind of the Cadillac of them all. But then you'll find that there's little clinics throughout the United States, and I actually found this woman. I used to live in Taos, New Mexico, and I found a woman in Taos, New Mexico, Tizia O'Connor. She's French, but studied in India, and she has prices that are as cheap as you can possibly get, for doing Panchakarma, and the woman's just an angel. I mean, it's astounding how what a healer she is. So you can do things from exotic like that and inexpensive to doing more sophisticated, expensive kind of spa experiences. But like I said, Asheville, North Carolina's got a great one. There's a bunch of different ones in California. There's so Iowa. I mean, all over the place. Yeah.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to be looking for some of them, because that, most people don't really understand just how much effect toxins have on our body. So this is
right.
excellent.
Yeah.
They just don't. People say, yeah. Well, I gave up, the green. I mean, I've gone green. I've given up all these toxic things, but these can lurk in our body for a very long time.
Yes.
We need to get them out of there.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so now we all know that spa treatments not only feel good, but we truly understand the power of spa purification. So let's talk about another one, perhaps. I love medicinal mushrooms, big fan of them. What makes mushrooms so important for cancer prevention?
Well, mushrooms are really interesting and amazing, the medicinal ones. And they can kill you too, but the medicinal ones. So, they've been used in China and Japan for thousands and thousands of years. And they have several different properties to them that are extremely useful as far as cancer prevention and cancer fighting. So they will have direct properties that are cancer killing, but one of the main things that they do is that they boost our immune system or support the cells in the immune system. So, for example, there's one that I discovered a couple of years ago called AHCC, and it stands for active hexose correlated compound, which is why we call it AHCC. But AHCC comes from Japan, and they're way ahead of us as far as their work with medicinal mushrooms, but it's a blend of medicinal mushrooms, and the way that it's processed is that they take the medicines basically from the roots or the mycelium of a variety of different medicinal mushrooms, and so the molecules, when they're extracted, are much smaller than what they are normally, in a mushroom formula, so it actually helps us to absorb it better into our system. They call it bioavailable, which, it just means that we're able to use it more. Mm-hmm. And there's been hundreds of studies done on AHCC, and they found that people that take it on a regular basis have a much lower incidence of all sorts of different kinds of cancers. They actually prescribe it in the hospitals in Japan because it helps so tremendously with survival statistics and helps to take away many of the side effects of chemotherapy. But what the research shows is that AHCC helps to support every single cell type in the immune system. So not only is it good for cancers, it's good for infections or preventing colds. I mean, I take it every day, and I have been flying nonstop across the country and haven't, had a single dip, in my immune system or cold or anything like that, which is, miraculous. And they've even found that it's now effective against the HPV virus for cervical cancer, kills the virus, and then if prevents you from getting the infection. So it's just an excellent immune booster. And with cancers, one of the fundamental philosophies of how it forms is that we're forming cancer cells all the time. It's just a natural process. And so there's cells in our immune system that will identify it and other cells that come and gobble it up and get rid of it. And so if your immune system gets slugged, then we'll see the dips in the immune system from stress, from staying up too late at night. Sugar just, completely wipes out the immune system. Like for 5 hours afterwards, they found the number and the function of the white blood cells drops by 90% after you've had a high sugar meal. Right? Yeah. So, you slug your immune system, well, then the cancer cells can go unrecognized and start to grow. So, the key thing you want to do is keep your immune system strong. And, a simple way to do that is to take AHCC. And, of course, all the normal diet and lifestyle things are things that help with your immune system, too. Right.
And it sure beats putting mushroom frosting on your cakes. So,
that doesn't sound appealing
to me at all. So I think the medicinals are excellent.
Yeah.
And you can eat them, but certain ones like the reishis and a few of the others, you really need to take in supplement form. And it's also hard. Many of us won't eat mushrooms every single day.
And that's the point. For me, there's a couple different points. One is it's a terrible statistic that 90% of people who've had a heart attack in the United States go back to the original diet and lifestyle in 1 year. So it's like, okay, death is not a motivator, but also it just shows us how hard it is for people to make diet and lifestyle changes. So I think the perfect thing to do is to start with some nutritional supplements first, because we absolutely have the research on them that show that they have a remarkable influence, cutting your risk in half. And again, we get these synergistic, reactions too. And as you mentioned, you're not going to eat turmeric every day when you're cooking. You're not going to drink 6 to 10 cups of, green tea every day. You're not going to, eat mushrooms every day. So, and then some of these you actually get more potent effects, and you get the therapeutic dose, too. So I actually designed a supplement called Protective Breast Formula that's got turmeric, green tea, maitake mushrooms, grapeseed extract, vitamin D, and two different things from the cruciferous vegetables, the indole-3 carbinol and the calcium D-glucarate, and combined it all into one tablet because, the thing is people are like, how many supplements can you take? I mean, it's just like it's hard on your stomach and hard on your pocketbook. So the idea with that was to get it all into one, so it's easy to take, cost effective, cost about a third of what it would cost if you were to buy each thing individually, and then also to have a guaranteed quality, because sometimes with certain supplement companies, they don't always have in their pill what they say they have.
That's right. And taking a whole handful several times a day of all of these different things is also
right.
And traveling with all of this stuff. Again, when you travel, you don't always even have the opportunity to eat all the things that you really need.
Right. Yeah.
Is this travel, any kind of travel. I mean, how much stuff can you take with you to
exactly.
eat?
Yeah.
So that's where I really love supplements too. It's for when you absolutely, even when you mean well, you can't do well. And so
that's true. Really, absolutely.
You can't eat your way out of a bad diet with supplements, but you can really make up for some ills, some transgressions. So great. Yes, big fan. And that's an excellent chapter in your new book on the mushrooms. I really enjoyed that chapter. So let's talk about the next one. How can being a giver of love be adverse to your health?
Well, this is a really cool thing. So when they did research looking at, the various different things that impact our health, they found the one thing that affects us more than anything, so more than genetics, more than diet, more than even smoking, are our relationships. So if you're in a toxic relationship, they found that there is nothing that is more damaging. I mean, the degree of stress that you experience is like the highest, the worst. If you are in a loving, supportive relationship, it's like the best thing that you can do for yourself. And they find that as far as the survival statistics and health statistics, that people that are loving, supportive relationships, that they have the highest, best health and the best longevity. So knowing that, when I actually do consultations mostly for newly diagnosed breast cancer patients all over the country, and kind of help them with an integrative approach. But I always talk with them about that because a lot of people that come to me are already kind of health conscious, going, oh, I don't know why this could have happened. And then I start, well, let's review your relationships. Ooh, So I'm like, okay, well, this is, something that is a non-negotiable when you, get a diagnosis of breast cancer, or if you want to avoid, getting it, is that you really do this complete inventory of your life with special attention to your relationships. And, if you have people that are toxic in your life, and a lot of times we think we have to keep these people in our lives because they're relatives or they're friends we've had since we were in grade school or something. But it's like, no, it's like, well, if this person, is toxic for you and, you can do some work with them if, you're committed to having the relationship work. But if it doesn't, it's like, bid them adieu. And you got 7 billion choices out there.
That's correct.
And, and only bring people into your life that are really loving and supportive. And it's, essential not only for your physical health, but your emotional health, your spiritual health, and, every other way. So it's a time to be ruthless, I say, and, and just surround yourself with loving, supportive people.
I couldn't agree more. So, okay, ladies and gentlemen, time for some deep thinking, time to sever those toxic relationships. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Dr. Horner. And now what about phytoestrogens such as soy and flax? Doctors just don't seem to understand them. I tell women to eat flaxseed daily, but their doctors tell them no. Would you share your thoughts on that?
Sure. So this is a really tragic misinformation that's out there. And the guy who coined the term phytoestrogens wishes he'd never done that, because this is, what's happened because of it. So simply put, what happens with these various different substances that have what we're calling phytoestrogens, meaning that they'll attach onto the estrogen receptor, is that there's various different strengths of estrogen is the main important concept here. So estradiol, which is the strongest, most abundant form of estrogen in the human body and made by the ovaries, is the one that's most linked to breast cancer because if it hooks on to an estrogen receptor in the breast, it will cause, let's say, 1,000 cells to divide. If a plant estrogen hooks on to the estrogen receptor, it is so weak, it just causes one cell to divide. Now, you can say, well, that's estrogen stimulating, but in fact, what it is this estrogen blocking, because if you flood your system with phytoestrogens or plant estrogens, it's like a game of musical chairs. There's only certain numbers of receptors there, and whoever the more of them are, and whoever gets there first gets a receptor and blocks the other ones from getting to it. So the weak estrogens will block the strong estrogens, and essentially what you have is like one cell will divide versus 1,000 cells dividing, and so if you flood your system with healthy, plant estrogens from flax seeds and even, organic soy and various other different sources, then what they find is that they block the estrogen receptor from the very strong estrogens as well as the chemicals, that behave like estrogens, which are always really strong. And it radically drops your risk of breast cancer. So flax seeds are one of my favorite foods and one of the most important foods that you want to consume in order to help lower your risk as well as fighting it, if you have it. So flax seeds have many different distinctions. One, they're the only food that will disrupt every single step of the estrogen pathway in the human body. No other food does that. It will block estrogens from attaching onto the estrogen receptor. It causes the breakdown in the liver where you produce more good kinds of estrogens that don't increase your risk and less of the bad kinds of estrogens. There's just many different things. It's high in omega-3 fatty acids, which are the healthiest types of fats, the most powerful anti-inflammatory substance they've ever tested. And inflammation, we know, plays a key role in breast, prostate, and colon cancers. So that helps to, stop that and also prevents, metastasis and growth and so forth. So there's the world-leading researcher out of the University of Toronto is Lillian Thompson. And she's literally done hundreds of studies on flax seeds. And so one study that she did that was over 10 years ago, she, longer than that now, probably 12. So she took a group of patients that were diagnosed with breast cancer, and before they had their surgery, so this is in Canada, they're, with the healthcare system there, and so there was usually about a 3-week lag time from the time that they were diagnosed to when they had their surgery done. So she gave everybody 3 to 4 tablespoons of ground flax seeds a day. At the 3 weeks when they had their tumors removed, and every single patient, she found that their tumors had shrunk. And so I thought, that's interesting. This was just at the beginning when I was, learning all of my stuff. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to start putting my patients on ground flax seeds and a couple other things that, I'd read about. And so the first patient that I did that with, we, same thing where she had diagnosed breast cancer, started her on ground flax seeds and some antioxidants, and 3 weeks later we took her tumor out, and in 3 weeks her tumor had shrunk by 2/3.
Wow.
In 3 weeks. 2/3 in 3 weeks. Now tell me, you should be taking this. It works better than tamoxifen does. So
without the side effects, I might add.
Yeah, and to me it's just really very tragic and almost criminal, that because it's all there in the medical research. And another, fact that, is just kind of hard, people don't want to hear it, but, your doctors don't have time to read. They're working 14 hours a day and they don't have time to read. And I actually had to quit my practice, focus full time on reading the medical research to learn all these different things, and to be able to speak about them. But if you go through the medical research, you can instantly see that the foods that are high in these, phytoestrogens are things that are extremely protective against breast cancer and definitely are things that we should be favoring. And the whole, concept of, they've got estrogens, you shouldn't take it, is just completely wrong. They're anti-estrogens. They're not estrogens.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And that's probably the best explanation I have ever heard on why you should embrace phytoestrogens. So thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was excellent. And again, you're going to see this in Dr. Horner's book. So if you didn't take notes, you can replay the show or you can read the book. Because I'm sure you'll find plenty of information there. Yeah. So, you've also been a big promoter of breast cancer vaccines. And if you could briefly talk about what your thoughts are on a breast cancer vaccine, perhaps the one being developed at the Cleveland Clinic, and how that may help people, even those who already have or have had breast cancer, that would be great.
Sure. So breast cancer vaccines are not available yet. So, I think that the science behind it is very interesting. I mean, they're back in 1936, there was a breast cancer virus that was first identified. It doesn't have the prevalence like we see with the HPV virus with cervical cancer, which is like in 99% of the cases. It actually is something where it varies from country to country, and the thing that makes it vary is that they found that mice actually carry this breast cancer virus. And so it gets transmitted to humans. I guess theoretically you could be inhaling it, from their excretions. But in areas where the mice are endemic with this breast cancer virus, then they find a much higher incidence in people. So the Eastern Africa, Middle East area is one of the highest, populations. They did a study in New York City where they took specimens of breast cancer from, women, and they found that it was present in about 40% of the specimens. In England and in Sweden, the incidence was 0 because the mice, don't have any of that breast cancer virus. So it varies per country, but here, in the United States, the statistics we have is about 40%. So we're thinking, okay, well, if you had a vaccine that was made against this particular virus, then you could, in theory, prevent 40% of the cases of breast cancer. So there are some people that are working on it. There is a organization called breasthealthandhealing.org, which is run by Dr. Kathleen Reddy, Reddy, and she's a breast surgeon in New Jersey. Wonderful woman. So she's working on that one. Mm-hmm. The Cleveland Clinic independently has been working on a different kind of a vaccine, and what they found was that there was a certain protein that is produced in most breast cancers. It's called lactoalbumin. So it actually is produced in lactating women. So it has to do with the breast the milk formation. Mm-hmm. So if you target that and have a vaccine that targets it, then they found that it's effective for most cases of breast cancer. Now, the problem with that one is that you can't have the vaccine before you're through having your children and breastfeeding. It has to be, after that time. But they're further along, and they're actually getting ready to start clinical trials in a year and a half or so. And what they're choosing as their very first subset of women is women who have triple negative breast cancer, and after treatment, and then to do vaccinations of them to see if it will reduce the incidence of recurrence in them. So that's the first group. Now, when we do clinical trials, it takes forever. You've got to study people for years and years and years. They've got to do safety studies, and then there's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, all these clinical trials. And so most of the time it takes about 10 years, for a vaccine to really hit. Now, the good news is that when they looked at the people that developed this particular virus, they found that those were the people that were the sickest. They had the poorest health. And if you do all the things to make yourself healthy, things I talk about in my book as far as diet, lifestyle, supplements, and so forth, you don't get the virus. You're resistant to it. So
great point.
You don't even need to worry about it. At this point, just get yourself as healthy as you can. And like I said, there's so many simple things. You do one thing, it cuts your risk in half, and you do more than one thing, they multiply up together. And you just keep adding things, is what you do. And the interesting phenomenon that happens is when you start doing some healthy things, your body starts to go into better balance, and you actually stop craving those things that are bad for you, and you start to feel better, and then you get more motivated. It's hard for people when they're super out of balance. They're kind of, have bad addictions, and they crave their addictions. But as you start to bring intelligence into the body, then the body stops wanting those cravings, and it starts to crave good things. So you start to feel better and better and better, and it becomes easier to have that kind of a lifestyle where you'll actually crave eating broccoli.
It's very true. I mean, people don't want to believe me, but I always say, just give it a try, because after a while, you're not even going to crave those items. You're not even going to want those items, and they can't.
Totally true.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Yeah. And our taste buds actually change in about 3 weeks. So if you cut out all sugar and salt, you actually, the architecture of the taste buds changed. And then if you try to eat sugar again, you nearly gag because it's too sweet.
It tastes so sweet, right? You kind of cringe and make that face. Ooh, just appeal to me.
If you can hang in there for 3 weeks, it's like then you can lose your taste for some of those stuff in it. And you really can make those changes and stick with them, and particularly when you feel and look so much better, too.
That's correct. So you are a huge advocate for a good night's sleep.
I am.
Yes, I am too. We've been working very hard on that. But why do you think this is so important?
Well, you know what? I mean, there's certain things, in our diet and lifestyle, but, certain things in our lifestyle in particular that are just pure medicine for us. And it seems like, oh, that's such a simple thing. It's free. It's free to go to sleep and sleep. But, we think, oh, all we're doing is kind of resting. But there's so many things that are happening, during the time that we're sleeping. And 5,000 years ago, Ayurveda said you go to bed by 10 o'clock, you get up by 6 o'clock. And what the research shows is that absolutely are the best hours, optimal hours for us to sleep. And the reason is that we have these hormonal fluctuations that happen throughout the day and throughout the night. And when we go to bed by 10 o'clock and get up by 6 o'clock, those hormonal fluctuations are optimal. If we go to bed after 10 o'clock, they're not. And this is in particular with the hormone melatonin, the sleep hormone. So when it starts to get dark outside, our melatonin levels start to go up. If you go to bed by 10 o'clock, there's a spike in our melatonin levels between midnight and 2 a.m., which you don't want to miss, because if you do, the consequences are absolutely spectacular. So what they found is that melatonin is not only our sleep hormone, it also is a very powerful antioxidant. It also regulates estrogen in our body. So higher melatonin levels will lower our estrogen levels, and high estrogen levels definitely have an association with increased risk of breast cancer. It also affects our immune system, so it stimulates some of the natural killer cells and so forth, and has many other healthy functions. So when your melatonin levels are flattened, then you lose all the protective abilities, and they found that women who work the night shift, which are the worst offenders of the natural law that you should go to bed by 10 and get up by 6, that they have a 50% higher incidence of breast cancer. The longer they work the night shift, the higher the risk is. Now, since then, there's been all sorts of research coming out in the last few years that have shown that people who stay up to midnight regularly, that they have twice the incidence of obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. And again, it's because we got all these hormones that are interacting with each other, and it's affecting other hormones. And then they found that from 10 to 2, our bodies are trying to naturally detoxify themselves. And if you stay up late, you lose that detoxification. Also, our cells will actually shut down to get ready to rest and go through that purification. So if you eat during those hours, which most people do, you start to get hungry again, 10 o'clock, you go snack or whatever. The cells don't want those calories. They're like, sorry, we shut down to go to sleep here. So they push it away, and where does it go? Your belly and your hips, right? Your
Excellent.
So that's why, a lot of people go, oh my God, I don't eat any excess calories or whatever. Why can't I lose weight? Well, are you staying up to midnight? Yes. So going to bed by 10 o'clock and getting up by 6 o'clock is like one of the most powerful medicinal things that you can do for yourself. I've had a number of patients who are having hot flashes, menopausal symptoms. The one thing they did was start going to bed before 10 o'clock and getting up by 6 o'clock, and their hot flashes went away because it just infuses your body with balance. And normally when you wake up, sleeping those hours, you feel really energized. And if you sleep in later than that, you can feel kind of groggy and sluggish for the rest of the day.
Well, I like the way you appeal to not the fear of dying, because we know that doesn't work, but the fear of you'll have less, hot flashes and menopausal symptoms, and that you will be thinner. So if we can appeal to that side of it, we'll probably get more people to get to bed
that's
by
right.
10 o'clock.
Thinner, more energized, less wrinkly.
Less wrinkly, less cranky. Yeah, so that's an excellent reason. And if you do have trouble, there are some things that help you to fall asleep, maybe taking the melatonin before bed. There's a number of really natural substances that can help you get to sleep, especially in the beginning while you're trying to retrain yourself.
Right,
Right.
So in Ayurveda, they say you go to bed 15 minutes earlier every week, to kind of naturally train yourself to go to sleep at an earlier time. So you're gradually backing it up. And then Ayurveda actually there's a company called Maharshi Ayurvedic Products International, or MAPI, MAPI.com. And they've got 2 herbal supplements. One's called Deep Rest. That's if you wake up in the middle of the night. That's your sleep pattern. And they also have one called Blissful Sleep if you have trouble falling asleep initially. And my sister-in-law was telling me, I need some help sleeping. And I said, this stuff is like fairy dust. I mean, I don't know what happens when you take it, but I mean, it's the smoothest, most wonderful. I mean, you take it and it's like the next thing you know, you're out and you're waking up in the morning, no hangovers, you feel fabulous. So I highly recommend those.
I recommend, the same idea. If I wake up in the middle of the night, I take a little, of my, what I call my sleep, remedy, and I go right back to sleep, because otherwise I'm going to toss and turn.
Right.
Right. So deep sleep and anything that is going to be less stressful to you are wonderful. So this is the end of our time together. This has been wonderful, Dr. Horners. I want to thank you very, very much for joining us and sharing with us all this great information.
Oh, you're so welcome. Like I said, it's my pleasure. I love getting this information out for women, because, simple things that you can do and, really can stop you from developing any kind of, terrible chronic disease like, breast cancer, but also, as we were just talking about too, the simple things going to bed at night like that, sleeping like that. But, for me, ultimately, it isn't just about preventing these diseases, but how great you can feel, I mean, being sick is the worst thing in the world. And it's like, boy, if you can, have just supercharged energy and look and feel great, and you get more joy out of your life, and you can pursue your passions, and it's
a whole wonderful package.
Yeah.
It really is. Prevent cancer and its recurrence. And I strongly encourage all of you to pick up a copy of Dr. Horner's book. You can find it on the shop page of my website, where there's a direct link to Amazon, and it's also available on Dr. Horner's fantastic site, drchristinehorner.com. So thank you, Dr. Horner. You are an incredible resource and a champion for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this has been Survive and Live Well, Tips to Treat and Beat Cancer on Cancer Support Network, W4CS.com, where you can listen live Tuesdays at 1 p.m. If you missed any part of this show, you can catch it on my website, www.elynjacobs.wordpress.com. Join us next week when guest host Jan Jargon talks with Dr. Sharon Gurm on the topic of oncothermia. This is your host, Elyn Jacobs, one-on-one cancer coaching, empowering you to treat and beat cancer. See you next week.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Beat Cancer Answer. If you learned just one thing today about how to prevent, cope with, or beat cancer, then we have succeeded in our mission. For more information or assistance, visit our website at BeatCancer.Org. Remember to sign up for our educational email series and get your free gift. Join in the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, or Google+, where you can meet others who think just like you. We appreciate all of your feedback and love your suggestions. Please also remember to rate us on iTunes. Your positive ratings help us to get discovered so we can save more lives. Thank you again for listening, and best wishes for good health from all of us at BeatCancer.Org.